Almost Any Ability, acronymed as AAA, is a tier 1 Pokemon Showdown found on the Other Metagame tab. The tier rolls under the idea of allowing for any unbanned Pokemon to use any unbanned ability in the place of their previous one, making for some drastic changes to Pokemon that don't always like relying on their original ability. A popular example of how this changes certain Pokemon can be seen in the excellent Manaphy Corviknight defensive core, which can power off a few ability synergies but most commonly runs off of the pairing of Fluffy and Regenerator respectively, which takes advantage of Corviknight's already great defensive stopping power by essentially doubling it, as well as Roost for consistent healing and U-turn for slow pivoting. While on the other hand, Manaphy takes advantage of Regenerator, which works well with its great utility move pool consisting of U-turn, Knockoff, Scald, and a few other extra coverage options, but most typically Ice Beam for common opposing Dragonites. All of this with Regenerator provides a great mixed defensive user, and due to its utility moves not being provided by status moves, it even gains the use of Assault Vest alongside its all-around bulk. But recently, the tier has ran into controversy with a suspect test on a Walking Wake, the paradox form of Suicune, which to some has come as a shock with its lack of usage, almost resulting in it falling down to UU in the standard Scarlet and Violet OU metagame. So what makes it so divisive in AAA? Well, it's really a large accumulation of things that have led to its controversy. Walking Wake already has a great stat spread, with an incredible base 125 special attack and a decent base 108 speed. It has a great offensive spread for a Scarfed Wallbreaker, but what really contributes to its power in AA the most is its move pool, seconded by its newfound ability in Primordial Sea, the exclusive ability the Primal Kyogre. Though of course this sounds like an obvious statement, powerful water type is better with free reign, it shouldn't really be shocking, but if that was all to why it was being suspect tested, Primordial Sea would simply be banned. In reality, there's a lot more to it than just that. Most notably, it's Walking Wake's access to two incredible moves in both Weather Ball and Knockoff, two of the most polarizing moves within the tier. But why? Well, that's fairly self-explanatory actually. Weather Ball assists Walking Wake with a very powerful water-type stab option that doesn't dissipate in Desolate Land, countering common Desolate Land users like Volcarona, Ogerpon Hearthflame, and dealing good chip to common specially defensive Desolate Land sets of Heatran. And then there's Knockoff, which while it lacks consistent damage output, it does something arguably far more important. Remove items, which in the AAA tier is one of the most detrimental effects able to be put on a Pokemon, especially Pokemon meant to counter Walking Wake, as with the abundance of hazards and general chip damage in the tier, leftovers and heavy-duty boots are two of the most important and common items present. Further than that, removing a Regenerator Pokemon's Assault Vest can turn them from a Walking Wake counter into simply another victim of it. Of course, its move pool doesn't just stop there, it also has access to two other very powerful moves, Draco Meteor and Flip Turn, which together either on Scarf sets or just standard wall breaking sets can be insanely deadly. Scarf pivots stop a lot of counterplay to it by simply leaving before it can get hurt, while still being able to deal good chip damage. And Draco Meteor is simply incredible because it's Draco Meteor off of its insane base 125 special attack stat, plus stab. But then why is its suspect test so controversial if it is so strong? Well, that's because it's not all broken. It does have a lot of definite counterplay. Walking Wake's power more so comes in the team builder, where it finds itself being very oppressive, forcing teams to typically carry at minimum 2 to 3 counters to it at all times. So then what does counter it? Well, first we'll start with its defensive checks. Walking Wake packs a typically fairly hard to resist stab set. Water hits a lot of common types either neutrally or super effectively that Dragon fails to, and Dragon can hit a lot of water types, and Dragon can hit a lot of types water fails to reach. As such, a lot of Pokemon that counter it tend to counter it in the form of abilities rather than the Pokemon's base stat or typing. Our first example of this is in Heatran, which can run one of two abilities, typically being either Desolate Land or Water Absorb, which each carry their own benefits. Water Absorb Heatran comes with the benefit of not proccing Weather Ball into a Fire-type attack, which the benefit of this is actually twofold, allowing Heatran to fully swap into Walking Wake and absorb its Weather Ball or Hydro Pump, healing a fourth of its health and providing a lot of assistance in the long run of a match. Where it fails though is in trapping Walking Wake, a benefit exclusive to Desolate Land sets. Desolate Land sets, while sacrificing themselves to chip damage from Weather Ball, do get the great advantage of risk-free Magma Storms, which allows for Heatran to trap Walking Wake and single-handedly take it down while still being able to set up rocks, or Will-O-Wisp on a hard swap if the enemy fears an incoming Magma Storm. Where this Heatran falls though is in its reliance to its item. Due to all the chip damage from Stealth Rocks, Weather Ball, U-turns, and more, it is extremely tied down to holding leftovers, which isn't a bad thing on paper until we remember Walking Wake gets knockoff, and on a successful read can knock a Heatran's leftovers off and greatly reduce its magnitude of effect in a match, especially if Walking Wake simply pivots back out, denying Heatran both any healing or trapping. On the other hand, a Pokemon that doesn't struggle with this is the most forgotten of the Gen 4 starter trio in recent years, Empoleon, which finds itself in the A- tier on the viability ranking, almost exclusively because of Walking Wake. Hardwalling it with its good special defense, unique typing that resists both of its stabs, and access to Roost, Flip Turn, Rocks, and a variety of options for its 4th slot. On the ability side, Empoleon typically prefers to run Beads of Ruin to drop Walking Wake's special attack, making an even better counter to Walking Wake and in general a large majority of other special attackers. It doesn't have to run this though. Due to its already good typing to resist Walking Wake, it can also run Volt Absorb to beat the occasional electric type attacker found in tiers such as Iron Hands or Thundurus, providing not just an immunity but flat out healing it, which can be intensely helpful in the long term run of a match. And on top of all of this, it also doesn't really need its item. Though it prefers leftovers for passive recovery, access to Roost makes up for losing it, and maybe most detrimental of all for Walking Wake, it can pivot out far slower than it, allowing for it to consistently swap away from danger and into a Pokemon that can offensively counter it. So then speaking of that, what does offensively counter it? Well, there are a few options to choose from, the most common of which though is Roaring Moon with the ability Sword of Ruin and a Held Choice Scarf, which can typically kill in one blow after a few bits of chip damage with knockoff, or full kill with Outrage from max HP. And due to Roaring Moon's superior speed stat, it doesn't even have to worry about underspeeding it. A large problem though with offensively countering Walking Wake is how good defensive pivots tend to be to its counters, which is a large motivating factor bringing people towards a ban vote. The most common counter, Roaring Moon, fails to beat a very standard teammate to Walking Wake, Regenerator Primarina, who resists knockoff, is immune to Outrage, and takes less than enough from Earthquake. And due to Roaring Moon needing Scarf to beat the common Scarf to Walking Wake, if it chooses to Earthquake, it tends to lock itself into a move that a very large majority of the tier is simply immune to, giving Pokemon like Dragon Dance Extreme Speed Dragonite a free turn for setup, which can very quickly end matches in the right moments. Even defensive checks like Empoleon still have issues too, mostly in fitting their move slots properly. Knockoff is extremely valuable, Flip Turn is necessary for pivoting, and setting up Stealth Rocks can be invaluable to a fast-paced metagame like AAA, where removal can be very difficult. So that leaves it with often only one extra move slot to pick from. The issue with this is that it causes it to only check specific Walking Wake partners and be essentially non-existent to the others. But while all of this might sound rather hopeless, there is one other way to defeat Walking Wake, and it lies in the ability Bulletproof. Gholden Boy is one of the best special attackers in the tier, with access to Scarf adaptability sets, Earth Eater or Well-Baked Body sets for immunities to its and others' common weaknesses, and Magic Guard sets to take advantage of Life Orb and Steel Beam without having to worry about the recoil damage. Gholden Boy holds a very strong case within the tier for being a potent and diverse special attacker that can be very unpredictable in what it can do. But one set I specifically didn't mention has seen a large rise with the upbringing of Walking Wake. Defensive Bulletproof Gholden Boy, which thrives off the niche aspect that Weather Ball is counted as a bullet-like move, and uses this to force Scarf sets to swap out, in which case Gholden Boy can use the turn to Thunder Wave, recover, or even set up with Nasty Plot if the case is right. The set does have counters though. Assault Vest Primarina is still very bulky and can be difficult to break through properly even with Thunder Wave plus Hex combos. But overall, Primarina typically struggles to break through Gholden Boy in return, making it rather pointless, especially with an opposing Gholden Boy packing Recover, though Psychic Noise Primarinas can be rather annoying to sets which rely on that for healing. I bring this case up though, not because it's the strongest or best option to defeat Walking Wake, but because it shows an interesting example of how any Pokemon can technically wall it with the right typing, stats, or move pool alongside an appropriate ability. So Walking Wake does tend to have a lot of counters. But then again, why is it being suspect tested? Well, that's because of these counters. Pokemon like Heatran, Gholden Boy, and less so Primarina and Empoleon all don't really like running these abilities just to defeat one Pokemon. And as I said earlier, a team typically needs at least 2 reliable ways to defeat Walking Wake because of the insane power it puts down against a team. The counter argument to this is that that's just how team building is done. Roaring Moon also is very good and needs counters on the team. The core defining point to me though is that the abilities Pokemon take to defeat Roaring Moon aren't bad in of themselves. Common counters like Scarf, Sword of Ruin, Zamazenta isn't a bad Pokemon or a worse one because it's built to defeat Roaring Moon, and it still manages to put a very large impact on the tier and on other Pokemon throughout the course of a match. Of course, the counter-argument to this is that Empoleon and Primarina also affect many Pokemon in the tier, and aren't necessarily worse because of their chosen abilities. Due to all of this, I leave the choice up to you. What do you think of Walking Wake in AA? Let me know down below, and that's all I really have to cover for this week. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe. I really appreciate all of the recent support, and I'll be going on summer break soon, so hopefully I'll be able to upload far more consistently. And I will see you all next time.